I started realising I was good at mimicry, just naturally good at it. I think you can either do it or you can't do it. And it was when I was about 15, 16, my father and I had happened to watch, I've always sort of been a bit of a show-off and been a bit sort of, I used to dress up as different things and just to make my mum and dad laugh. And I was about 14, 15, and they saw I had a bit of an interest in it. And there was a documentary on the TV about an amateur variety club in Felton, Middlesex. And I watched it and sort of thought, I'd love to do a bit of that. And he phoned up and got in touch with a guy called Eric Gates. And I joined the Armada Variety Club at 15. And we used to go off and do sort of like charity works for old folks and different things. And it was nice. And I was a youngster in it. And lovely old Eric, who's sort of, he's long gone now, but I still have him to thank for sort of stoking the fire in me. And I stayed with them for about 3 years and gradually realised that I'd like to do it. And then I got in touch with, there were actually a camp company called the Pure Corn Company, and I met a guy called Lee Tracy, who introduced me to another gentleman who used to put on stag nights, believe it or not. And I was only a youngster, 18, 19 years old, and I used to do all the stag nights with comedians that were on the circuit that were just before me, people like Mike Reid, Jimmy Davidson, Michael Barrymore, and people like that. And I went along as pretty green around the edges, pretty green around the gills. And I learnt my apprenticeship in stag nights and hen parties and stuff with strippers. I wasn't a stripper, of course. I don't think I qualified for that. And I used to love it. And I went from earning £18.50 a week in Bentles at Kingston, shop assistant, to quite a lot of money I was getting that week. And I bought my first car with it. And then I realised I didn't really want to end up in this circuit forever. So I went into variety and I got myself an agent. And I was very fortunate. It started to happen quite quickly, but I worked very, very hard. I used to slip up and down the motorways even then when I was 20 years old, and I used to do all the social clubs, which was the circuit. And I got onto the more more professional I became. I started getting better work, getting better clubs, and then I got some telly very early on. And my career has been pretty good, actually. I'm pretty happy with the way it went. Amazing thing, actually. It was, I'd done the year before, they made a series which was hosted by Jimmy Tarbuck, and right on, and Jimmy Tarbuck, and it was live. It was a live show going out at London Weekend, and I did the first year, and I didn't sort of I did all right, and then they got me in for the second year. And I was on the bill in the second half, and they gave me 8 minutes, I think. And I went out there and I did Freddie's style impression. Came out and did Freddie, and then I did a Cliff Richard impression of singing. And then I had this coat where they pulled the coat off. It had like Velcro at the back. And then I went and sat at the piano and played the piano and did singing impressions, and I tore the place apart. It was at Her Majestys Theatre, and you reminded me that it was 1984, 85. I can't remember then. But and from that day on, the phone rang all the time. The next day, they were phoned up, and voila, off I went. And I got into a show called Copycats, which was based on impression, a bit like the latter day Who Do You Do, which was in the 70s. Copycats was in the 80s, and I got a chance to do that. And because I was I'll tell you one of the most greatest influences, which is rather a nice story, that Mike Yarwood was the big impressionist at the time, and I wrote a letter to him when I was 16 years old, and he said, be as original as you can. Just be original, don't copy me, try and find your own material, find your own impressions. And that was the best bit of advice, because everyone was doing Tommy Cooper, and they were all doing the normal ones, and I was doing sort of people that no one had ever done. And I kept with that for many years. Although I didn't want to be just an impressionist, I wanted to sort of be an entertainer. And I was fortunate because I could sing, so I could do singing impressions as well. And that's actually what the strength is when I come to do corporate work. But Yarwood is a friend of mine now, and we go and I take him out for an Indian meal about 3 or 4 times a year. And he is one of my heroes, and to know him as a friend, it's a real privilege. In fact, we went out the other day, and Mike Yarwood was there, and then there was me who sort of came up behind him, and then John Coleshaw that came up, and then another lad now that's doing very well, a guy called Danny Posthill, who is sort of another generation of impressionists, and we were all there together and we had our photo taken. It was lovely. It's great. I'm very, very fond of Mike. Right, so from live at Her Majestys in 84, 85, I got then the Copycats, and then from Copycats, because of this desire and this ability to be able to do new people and not just go along with the norm, I got offered a chance to do my own shows. And a guy called John K. Cooper, who was the exec producer of Stanley Baxter's show, he was one of the real big guys. He took me under his wing for the first year, and we made a special, and then we made a series. I think it was called Bobby Davro On The Box. And then he moved aside, he got another job, and I had Nigel Lithgow, Nasty Nigel, who went over and made billions of pounds over in America with Simon Fuller. Excuse me. And he took me under his wing, and I did my best work, I think, TV Weekly and Bobby Davro on the box and Davro Sketchpad. And I did some fantastic work with Nigel. And then he moved away, and then I had a guy called Vic Finch, and we did the last 2 series. But at that time, coming towards the late 80s, I could see the writing was on the wall a bit for Saturday night television shows like myself, and people like Russ Abbott, who was fantastic at the time, and Les Dennis, who is one of my dearest friends. And I realised that the material that people who were doing on live Saturday Night Live and Friday Night Live, it was edgy, it was a bit university, it was young, and I could see that, and I wanted to do that kind of stuff. But I had a contract to do ITV, so all the people I was impersonating, like Jonathan Ross, I was the very first person to do Jonathan Ross, and I was doing Julian Clary, I think, and Max Headroom, Max Headroom, and all these different people that I did were very much sort of Channel 4 people. I used to do a very big impression of, what's his name? Jules Holland, basically. And I used to do a bit like sort of Hunchback. On the other side of the studio, we have David Essex. I used to do David, I used to do all these impressions. It was a lovely time, and I had a girl with me who was doing all the shows called Jessica Martin, and we were the sort of John Coleshaw, Deborah Stevenson of the day. Usually I notice somebody that I think, I was the first person to sort of do Julian Clary, as I said. And I said, I like this guy. Yeah, he's got a different way with him. And so I thought, I'll do him in the TV show. And it's nice. You don't know how it's going to go. I found that the stuff that I wanted to do, maybe it was a little bit clever. I used to do Ben Elton and people like that. But I remember after we made a special a few years after I hadn't done telly for a while, and the BBC thing had gone away, and I got a phone call from Central Telly, and they offered me a special. I went and did it, and I said, I'm going to stick to my guns, and I'm going to do lots of new impressions. So I did Michael Barrymore, or White at the time, he had the shows, and then I did people like, you might know, do you recognise the voice? I took my dog for a walk in the cemetery. I met this woman this morning. I said, no, I'm just taking my dog for a walk. That was that's meant to be, I'm trying to think of his name now. Paul Merton. And then I did a bit of Joe Brand, which you look at the picture on the wall there. And so I did a bit of Joe Brand. And then I did Joe Pasquale, love had an accident. And then I did Paul O'Grady, he was at the time he was doing Lily Savage. So I want to be as original as possible. And I still strive to be that. In my show now, I do a routine based on my sort of genre of or entertainer of the 80s. I always go, why don't they bring a show back for the entertainers of the 80s, the comedians of the 80s, in the 90s, and they call it Still Alive at the Apollo. And I think it's a great sort of way to getting in the new impressions. So I'll do Michael McIntyre, and then I go, yes! And I go, here he is, it's John, so do me John Bishops, I'll be out there. And then I'll do me Alan Cowers, and then me Jimmy Cars. And so I keep up with it. Here we go. So I keep up with all the new ones, and that's the most important thing. As long as you keep going. Getting them, really. I was very. I think what happens is in corporate work, when you are an act which is on the telly and very visual, people always want them. But this is the secret to it. There's many cases, and that I see some of the wonderful comedians which we've mentioned that aren't right. They're not right for the client, but the client's right. Let's invent a client. Tom Coase, the washing machine people, right? That's sort of top of my head. Oh, they're very good company, big company, Tom Coase, right? It's just an imaginary name. And because they've got loads of money and they're doing very well, we want an entertainer, comedian, right? The company's been around a long time, so they book a comedian of the era. So who's the best comedian? And they name a couple of acts. And they're the wrong act for their client, for their business, because some of them are middle-aged, or maybe older audiences, but they give it to a youngster and goes, I'm going to book such. How much is he? Fortunes. It's fortunes, right? Well, he must be good if he costs that much. You've got to. And you don't know as a corporate booker, you sometimes try and say, no, don't book them because they're not right for you, but why don't you have someone say, oh, no, we want the best. So they spend all that money, then they have the comedian going in, it's not right for them. And they're not prepared, because they're big names, they're not really prepared. You've booked you booked me, and there's a big name. That's what you've booked, that's what you're going to get. That's what it says on the bottle. You get what's said on the bottle, right? And whether you like it or don't, that's what you've booked. Whereas I've adopted a different attitude. I've book. I have to. I can't. I don't have the I don't have the profile now that I used to have. So I have to cut my cloth. So when I go out there, because of my experience and because of my act, I can adapt. Yes, in some ways, it doesn't really change that, depending, as long as you're in the right gig. If you get booked, if you want someone to entertain classical music fans, and they book Bobby Davro, you're not going to, you don't stand a Hogan House chance. And occasionally that works. That happens. It's the same with. This is why if you speak to a lot of modern comedians, they don't like doing corporate work. Well, it's not my audience, is it? It's somebody else's audience, or it's an audience that someone can bought tickets to see me. This is what I'm just saying, that it changes the parameters of performing. But if you can adapt, like I can, sometimes they don't want to listen to jokes. They don't want to hear funny. They want to dance. I had one day before yesterday. Where have we gone? We've gone to do a gig, and it was they just wanted to dance. It was in Manchester. And I knew, and I could sense it. They'd been sat there having their dinner, they'd had their speeches. They didn't have a band on afterwards, and so I thought, this audience, what are they going to have? They're just going to have another comedian. So I did some comedies, did some singing, and at the end, what I do, I've built up half an hour of a dance set of all dancers. So I can get the whole audience out of their tables onto a dance floor if there's one there, and I can do all the dance-along songs. So I'll do a bit of Madness, and then I'll do Barry Manilow, Coca-Cola, all up-tempo stuff, Stevie Wonder, then I'll do Billy Joel, and I'll do Status Quo and Village People, and then I'll get them also a bit of Sweet Caroline with Neil Diamond, and then a bit of Robbie Williams. So I've got all this stuff, bit of Elton. I've got all this stuff which gets them up and dancing. And sometimes that's required as an entertainer, and that is... It's something that I have. It's all my sort of ammo, if you like. And I can also do auctions, because I've learned how to do auctions, heads and tails. I'm a very, I don't sound so conceited to say I'm a very good host, but I'm a very good corporate entertainer. And there's very few now left. There's not many left, not many people. Bob Monkhouse was a huge friend of mine. He could do it all. And he used to tell me, he told me the best advice, economics, a joke is about economics of words. And it's about knowing the right material to do for that audience. You can't always get it right, but my success rate is, I would say, about 98%, because I very rarely misjudge an audience. Sometimes I get it wrong, but most of the time I get it right, and I'm very proud of that. And I think this is why people phone up and still use me, I'd like to think. The key to keeping, when you haven't got a profile, it's not as easy. However, I think reputation is something you have to gain, and respect. You have to get that, and I think I'm very lucky after 35 years doing it. I have got a good reputation. I've got a respect. You have your little bumps along the way, but everybody will. You won't get away with it 100%. You've got to take the good times from the bad times. But I've been very fortunate. That there have been very few bad times when it's come to my professional work, and I still work at it, and I still adapt, and it doesn't cost anything, as my dad used to say. He was a man of few words. He used to say, Bob, that's all he said, he was a man of few words. No, he used to say, when it comes to comedy, I said, I want to be a comedian. He said, if you can make just one person laugh, then you're shit. You've got to make a lot of people laugh, you can be a comedian.